Welcome to the Real Life Artist Podcast. This is the show where we discuss the challenges that come with being an artist, as well as ways you can overcome those challenges through practical applications, shared experiences, and general discussion. My name is Luke. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in today. You know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage or snack, or if you're just in your car, going to work or something, or a road trip, sit back, relax, enjoy. Today's topic, I've got to admit, pretty deep. A lot to get into. And, it has to do with this dreadfulness, this dreadfulness of continuing where we feel like we're just not able to. And what are some of the things that come up in our lives that cause this, and how do we address them? So, let's get into it. Essentially, I have no motivation to continue my dream. Maybe your dream is to write music full-time, be composer, producer, artist, or something else, and you've just kind of given up. Time's gone on, you have no motivation, you feel like a total imposter, and you just can't do this. Does that sound familiar? Believe it or not, most of your big creative inspirations go through this block regularly, or they're still going through it. So some examples I could think of is Eminem, who writes about this in his collaboration with Beyonce titled Walk on Water. NF, another rapper, writes about this in his song Outro. And there are so many artists who openly talk about this all the time. And these are just a few ones who talk about it publicly. What about all the ones who don't talk about it but are struggling with it? I've struggled with this frequently. It's every day is a challenge, can be a challenge, certainly. And why does this happen? Why does it seem to happen often? And there are a number of reasons, but I've gathered sort of the top 5, what I consider common ones that I've heard and experienced. And those 5 are these. 1, I feel like I'm an imposter. I'm not the right person for the job. What if everybody finds out I'm a fraud? Or, what if I fail big time on a project? So 1, I'm an imposter. 2, my family doesn't support my decision to become an artist, composer, producer full time. 3, my spouse does not support my decision to become an artist, composer, producer full time. 4, I don't have any time anymore and life has become too stressful. And 5, I've already tried and haven't seen success. All right, so like I said, pretty deep things. Let's talk about them, and just keep in mind this isn't all-encompassing. Of course, there's other reasons, but these are some of the heavy hitters I've noticed and sort of picked up on. And the other thing I sort of wanted to talk about was the fact that this kills our motivation to continue our dreams. But first off, what is motivation? Well, I think at face value, we all know what motivation is. Oxford Languages defines motivation as the general desire or willingness of someone to do something. That's obvious. It's motivation, right? Do I want to do something? But here's the thing about motivation. Being motivated doesn't really matter. When it comes to music and being an artist, it really doesn't matter. Does it help? Yes. But a much better word to build your art, craft, and business on is discipline. So this would be, finding good habits, good systems, and a good mindset. But here's the thing. Here's where I'm going to just stop preaching and actually acknowledge that I don't think when we're talking about, motivation and such in the music space, lacking motivation is draining and it's overwhelming. And don't get me wrong, it's a root cause that can commonly be associated with depression and such, or just being down. So, for example, if you don't feel like working on music, maybe, you live in a disruptive environment, and every time you start composing music or writing or something, people tell you to turn it down, or you get noise complaints. Not like I can relate to that at all. I can. Or maybe like you have a day job and it's just not going so well, and then you're drained, and then you will get home and don't want to do anything. Does that sound familiar? Well, all that to say that lack of motivation to work on your dreams is crushing. And all of these extra issues and stressors don't help at all. But I want all of you who are listening to know it's okay to be here. It's okay to be in this place, to not be motivated, to be discouraged. It's just not okay to quit. Don't let me or anybody undermine how you feel about motivation or continuing. You might be in a rut. You might be stuck. And if that's the case, welcome to the party. Glad you're here. We're going to talk about that and really go in a lot of depth. So, let's tackle these points, talk through them, and see what we can uncover. Number one, I feel like an imposter. I'm not actually good at what I do. And what if someone finds out I'm a fake? Well, to reply to this one, as I've been saying repeatedly, I want to assure you that a lot of people have this insecurity. I have it myself sometimes. I've had it. You get hired for a project and then you feel like, man, they really hired the wrong person to do this. They should probably find someone more qualified. And it's normal to have strengths and weaknesses, but here's the thing to keep in mind. The more that you do your craft, the more that you create, your brain is slowly going to start to tell you, wow, I really am a musician. I mean, I practice my instruments regularly, I make music regularly. The more you work on it, the more votes your brain is going to cast that you actually are an artist, composer, etc. And that's why it's important to build good systems and habits and avoid bad ones, because the bad ones can cast negative votes in your head and tell you that you're lazy and that you're not really on this and that you're really not good at what you do. So, if you go to episode 1, the very first episode, we talk about habits and systems in more depth. Highly, highly recommend going back and listening to that one. Also, another book I'd recommend is Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's literally what the book is about. Habits. Super informative. 2, my family doesn't support my decision to become an artist, composer, musician full-time. So this is something I've dealt with, and I can resonate with it. It's really tough because maybe your family tells you, oh, you should get a real job, and then you feel invalidated. Like what you're doing isn't a real job. It's not worth your time. There's no long-term benefit, is sort of what you're being told. And it can be said from a place of care and love, obviously, from your family. They just want you to be okay and financially stable and such. But here's my advice, my input on this. Let your family know that you're appreciative for their care, but you have to do what ultimately is best for you. And that might mean working a day job until you can pursue music full time. But you are going to have to set that boundary that is like, hey, I get what you're saying, but you need to give me space, and this is not something I will tolerate. You also need to keep in mind that maybe your family they're growing up in a different time, a different era. They don't fully understand how times have changed or the entrepreneurial opportunities for today. So you need to keep in mind that perspective. I guess try your best to approach it with that mentality to be understanding, but definitely set that boundary. So that's 2. So 1, I feel like an imposter. 2, my family doesn't support me. 3, my spouse doesn't support my decision to become an artist, composer, or producer full-time. Now this one's tricky because maybe you're married or you're in a dating relationship and it directly affects your counterpart, what career decisions you make, obviously. Now, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to approach this one from the standpoint that you're either married or you're looking for a relationship long term. So, when you and your spouse got together, and you're serious, here's the question that has to be asked. Were you working like a full-time day job, or were you already doing music full time, and or were you working a day job and now you want to do it full time? What was the starting situation? If it is the case that you were working a full time job and now you're starting to talk or you're starting to shift to music full time, keep in mind that it's going to be difficult for your spouse, your significant other, because they didn't sign up for that, or they didn't walk into the relationship potentially, unless you spoke about it, knowing that this was going to happen. And let's be honest, most people, again, going back to not understanding entrepreneurial ventures these days, they may not understand that could be full time. They just think it's an unstable form of income, and that's why they don't want you to do it. It's just not something viable. I think an honest conversation is certainly needed at this point. I would definitely consider, getting in the weeds of learning business, sales, marketing, etc. And of course, music and collaboration, and present that to your significant other. And, on top of that, maybe make a business model and such on your own, present to them to show how serious you are. You could even start making sales without saying anything and just present that. Now, again, every relationship's different and might not require this, like, hey, like, I've kind of brought things up. Maybe you just start doing it anyway, or, again, you have these honest conversations. But I'm not a relationship counselor, but I do think a good, healthy conversation would be great, and also really putting your ducks in a row. 1, I feel like an imposter. 2, my parents do not support my decision or family. 3, my spouse doesn't support my decision to become an artist full-time. 4, I don't have time anymore and life has become too stressful. That's point 4. So this is super difficult because you lose focus when you're stressed. And when you don't feel like you have time, you can't get anything done. How do we get to this point? How does this happen? Maybe there could be a very stressful event in your life. Could be separation of household, new responsibilities, new job, fighting or arguing in a close relationship, and now you're stressed. And these things really take away from your time of music and the craft. What can you do from here? Well, on a very real note, and I do mean this, you may consider professional therapy or counseling. And that's not to say anything is wrong with you, right? But a professional counselor is going to have ways to diagnose and treat these stressors in a proper time frame. So I'd recommend this to anyone, quite frankly. And obviously, I'm not a professional counselor, so definitely go seek professional help if you think that will be useful. I definitely recommend it. Aside from that, though, I highly recommend that you set boundaries between you and others in that close relationship that contribute to these issues. You need to learn when to say yes, when to say no, and when others are controlling your life and ultimately your time. If you allow others to pass their issues on to you, then they no longer have those issues. You do. This is where boundaries come into play. If you've had issues telling people no and being friendly about it, there's another book I'm going to recommend, Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. Again, this can become an issue if you don't have proper boundaries, and whenever someone, maybe you have a family member or a friend who, whenever their car breaks down, they're like, hey, like, you need to pick me up, or you need to fix me, or give me money to fix my car or something, you definitely need to be setting these boundaries. So far we've covered 1, I feel like an imposter. 2, my family doesn't support my decision to become an artist, producer, composer. 3, my spouse doesn't support my decision. 4, I don't have time and life has been stressful. And finally, last but not least, I've already tried and I haven't seen any success. How discouraging is it when you've put in everything, maybe for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you haven't seen any success? That's discouraging. It really is. I want to start off this point by defining what we mean by success. And what have you tried? If success is defined as quitting your day job, and that hasn't happened yet, but maybe you've gained like followers on social media or something, you made a bit of money, perhaps you need to re-envision what success is. Success is a journey, and ultimately it comes in milestones. Look where you were at, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Do you see the success I'm talking about? Maybe you didn't know the first thing about music back then. Now you can make full beats, instrumentals, songs. Maybe you do make full songs. That's great. Is that not any success? Sometimes we just have to put these notions of success to rest and just realize also that we've got to learn. I'm reminded every day, because I read books about business and such, of this topic. Don't wait to start until you know everything. Just keep learning, and that's really the only way you're going to grow. One of the reasons I have things to talk about on this show is because I'm always taking in new information. I'm always learning. I always humble myself and say, you know what? I don't know everything. Today I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna read. Make sure that you use your difficulties of the past as well to learn. Even if they're really tough, because unfortunately pain can be a good teacher. And, as for moving on, make sure you've thoroughly thought about, and reflected on your past, what we would define as failures or mistakes, and what you're going to do next. So notice how I said, learn what we're going to do next. If you've got an idea of what you want to do next, start learning. And like I was just saying, maybe that's reading books, talking to people who know more than you or are more talented than you. This is how you're going to get far. If you're the smartest person in a room, go to a different room, because you can learn a lot from others. So that was dense. That was a lot. Let's summarize from here. Kind of talk about the 5 points. So we talked about the 5 points. One, the reason I might not want to continue my dreams is I feel like an imposter. 2, my family doesn't support it. My spouse doesn't. 4, I don't have any time and life's become stressful. And 5, I've tried and have not seen success I wanted. So let's summarize here. First off, motivation helps, but it's not key. The key is discipline. Keep in mind that mindset is also a key to all of this. Honest conversations are needed between spouses and family. Boundaries also need to be set. And then always be open to learning and remaining patient. Sometimes, if we're in it for the long game, a week of losses, a month of losses can seem like the end. But just remember, we are in this for the long game. And that might mean a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year of what we would call failure. But let's remain patient and learn from those. Question them. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to pick up this topic again, delve more deep into it, let me know. Go to the show notes for ways to contact. But I appreciate you tuning in today. Hope it was useful and inspiring and provided some insight. Remember, you're not alone. There's a whole community of artists, producers, composers right here, myself included, that want to help you on this journey, and it's a difficult journey. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one.